Blur meat.
You saying we live?
We're live.
Boom.
I think so.
Let me check. Are we?
No, I just I'm munching.
Is someone eating, bro? I'm banging a drum.
My bad. Go on mute for.
I said, Leon, I thought you got electrocuted. Yeah, I think we live still. We got Chucky. Right there on the top left corner of the screen.
You got everyone. Raven's here.
Let me see,
Let me see if I can follow one. There we go. We are live. All right. Let's see what it is. Yeah. What do you mean by race realism? All right. Invite your friends, everyone. What do you mean by race realism? That's the topic today. Listen. What is it to be a race realist? Who are the race realists? And what do the race realists believe? So we'll be covering that today.
Oh, yeah, that's the intention.
So let's see everyone. That's the intention. All right. So everyone who's in the chat,
Yeah, that's a good topic.
welcome. Hello. Tell your friends. See how he's gone live. I'm not too sure if he's using new technology today.
Man's trying to think still.
He's trying to think, but he's trying to think for you guys, yeah, because he wants to improve the service. So you should at least give him a thumbs up for that. Right now we have one thumb up, so we're going to give you another thumb up for trying to improve the service. Even though Google Hangouts to give you a decent technology, you want to go a bit further. So well done, family. So the man them in the chat, give him a lot. So far I'm seeing 2. I know there's 22 watching at the moment. So we should get at least 20. And that's 2 people being ignorant. All right.
Hey, let me know what the stream's saying though, everyone, because I big up my brethren Tristan in comment. My brethren. Let me know what the stream's saying though, who's watching, man. If it's good or not. If it's buffering still or what. Video output low.
It says, should we wait for a bit for to kick up? Yeah. It's cut, you know. So
yeah,
the thing is cut on my video. Well, I'm looking at.
I'm saying.
Like,
yeah, it's like the screen or a zoom in thing.
Yeah.
Everything's zoomy.
No, I know that. I had to reduce the output from 1080p in it to 720 still. So obviously I need to resize everything. But I want to know if the stream is running smooth though. That's all I'm concerned about right now. I can adjust everything other than that. You get me?
Yeah, I think it needs to be.
Go on your phone. Go on your
net, man. No, I can see it. It seems to be running smooth. Obviously, I'm talking so the sounds are. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you see, you have like a normal 4 or 5 second delay. Maybe a minute.
Go on your phone, man.
Yeah,
I'm checking that. I'll sort this out real quick.
Right.
Man is saying that it's normal again. Clara is saying rise, COE rise.
I respect.
You invite man on still.
Which might explain earlier vibe still.
Yeah, you can come on
anytime
you want, bro.
That's hard to come on. Tell him I'm saying hi, man. Tell him come on. He might understand.
Hey, have you and Sarah ever been on the same panel before? Raven.
Who?
You.
Yeah, a few times. But usually he has to leave because of like people jumping in and stuff, innit? But we spoke for years, man. We've been speaking for years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I say that the food didn't even know, man, from before the park. Still mad thing.
Nah, man. No, we know to be earliest. But
yeah, that's the thing going. I'm a carrier and again in a Raven.
in the last 3 years, not forever. Obviously, Mark Scarvey went to the corner and all that.
Us. Yeah.
Uh,
I say she got a new name still.
all right.
Yeah, man.
Man's just
Right, so
adjusting
people,
the
today
thing
the
live,
topic
you know.
is
Do your thing, Raven. Take over.
Realism. What do you mean by race realism?
Anymore, you know.
Are you serious?
It looks like you cut off.
Come on. Can't be right.
You're lying, fam.
Maybe not. Maybe I goes right. No.
Yo, are we live, guys? Just type live if we're live.
Okay, yeah, we're good.
Probably a 1 minute delay. You probably get that in a minute.
Yeah, we're good.
All right.
Yeah, no.
Crying wolf there, man. Is he crying?
Yeah, I was. We're good, man.
Oh, fair enough. All right, so where were we? Yeah, so race realism. Yeah, in the comments if you want to type what you think race realism is. Yeah, so we're gonna talk about it because there have been some members who have identified as race realists at the park. So it's a topic of discussion today. Does anyone want to kick off of their interpretation of what a race realist is?
From what I was into that guy earlier, I think it comes from as me getting political now, from the realist political paradigm of realist school of thought, which as opposed to a liberal or idealist, obviously they claim to sort of see things for the way they are, down to the core, the reality. Quite a lot. The criticism is quite often it's quite reductionist. It doesn't look at nuances. It looks quite at base realities and then draws conclusions from that. So I suppose race realism would be looking at racial groups and drawing realistic ideas as opposed to the liberal sort of ideas that sort of come up with things like equality and all those sorts of things. So we'll be sort of like looking at races and saying, what are these races doing? What have they done? Is this race sort of has this race been industrial or these kinds of things or these ideas to look at it from a Western point of view? The interesting thing about race realism, I suppose, having read Marcus Garvey's message to the people, there's a short little part there about ethnology, about studying race realism. So I'd like to talk about that side of things. If our friend Ralph does come on and wants to talk about his idea of race realism.
Right. Now, let me just jump in for a sec. Because we might have a 1 minute delay, they were saying, I'm seeing things like it's cutting in, cutting out. But grid not coming up very clear, big up. Oh, yeah, but I think they can hear us. But there was some complaints that was cutting in, cutting out. But once again, with a 1 minute delay, it might have been fixed already. We won't know. Kind of like Back to the Future kind of flex. So we'll just carry on. Yeah. So that was good. That was good by our brother Shattered there. Scattered, you know, but scattered there. Yeah. Shattered. Yeah.
I'm a little bit tired, man.
Yeah. So Shaka, I want to jump in on anything?
Yeah, to be fair, the terminology is new to me of race realism. But I believe that the basic ideas are not new to me. I recall a guy by the name of, I think it's Hank Shockley, who debated Mother Frances Cress Wilson sometime in the 80s or 90s with regards to the psychology of Black people, yeah, and their educational attainments. And so kind of what I'm understanding from the terminology is the same kind of thing. They're just basically reinforcing classical the ideas of like scientific racism, you know what I'm saying? Having said all of that, William Shockley is the guy's name, not Hank Shockley. William Shockley.
Right.
Hank Shockley. I'll say Hank Shockley. Hank Shockley. No, is it Hank Shockley? As a part of the Bomb Squad, Public Enemy's production team. So, but yeah, maybe I'm getting it mixed up. But yeah, William Shockley. But yeah.
Oh, William Shockley. He debated.
Francis Cress Wilson.
Yeah, Francis Cress Wilson. Yeah. You guys check that out. Yeah, that's good to it. That's good one to check out.
Yeah. So so yeah. That said, like I don't see race realism as any more a part of the system than race denial, if that makes sense. I think both of them serve the same purpose. You know what I'm saying? And they're both feeding the same thing. It's just two wings of the same airplane. Like
when you say race denial, just clarify that for the.
So we live in a world that whereby the popular talk is there's no such thing as race. There's no biological basis for it. You know, it's not genetic, and there's more genetic similarity between some Africans and some Europeans than there are between Africans. You know, them kind of things there. And I believe that from an ideological point of view, both of these are designed to support the same system and like Western civilization in general. You know what I mean?
Okay. Well, and that's something that we should unpack later as well. That concept of bringing new ideas that could end up in making people less active in trying to pursue stuff. It's very interesting. Very interesting topic there. Yeah. So from my standpoint, I said it before in the stream that cut off, is my understanding of race realism is literally a rebranding of scientific racism, and the history of it is identifying the races, but showing key strengths and weaknesses between, I guess at the time there were three races, which was the Mongoloid race, the Negroid race, and the Caucasoid race, as they described it, and highlighting that one race is not as intelligent as the other race, one race is not as strong as the other race, and then because of this will then justify things that could happen. Like, so for example, if you're from a race that could never achieve a certain level of intelligence, then the governing bodies wouldn't necessarily need to spend as much money on you when you're schooling because you're never going to achieve a certain level. So this was the history, the line of where I studied like scientific racism and how it later became race realism. And we're going to understand as well is there are many people who are white supremacists or racist or so forth, and every few years it rebrands itself. And I think that for a certain part, race realism is a rebranding of scientific racism. And then you would have to have someone come on to disprove that and say. And I think a guy who I first heard using the term was a guy called Jared Taylor, and you should Google him. And he's been on like Oprah Winfrey show and a whole lot of shows, and he was spearheading the race realist movement. So check him out.
Gosh.
Very calm speaker. Really well writer as well. You would write his book and the words he used, very well written. You would never actually come out and say this is quite alarming stuff.
Hey Raven,
definitely check him out.
Yo, you can hear me?
I think as well what I've seen as well is they talk about education. So they'll say like when you look at education, blacks are doing worse, Asians are doing best, Europeans are doing middle. And what I've noticed as well is some of them, if not all, have used it as like, we're not necessarily white supremacists because we're saying the Asians are superior to us. But I don't know. This was a narrative that I see quite consistent.
Yeah, I think. Sorry if you can hear me. I think that what's it called? The race realism point or the scientific racism point is actually a good one, which I overlooked. I think definitely it is almost like an updated version of that old scientific racism thing. But to take the realist point of view, for example, and just to say I was to adopt and say from what I was trying to say earlier in terms of the international politics and the idea of realism, just to say I was to say I'm a realist now, and I was to look at ethnology and racial groups realistically, or maybe become very different from the conclusions other people draw about the behaviors or the attitudes about specific racial groups. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's interesting interesting when you because it hold up like you say exam results. So achieving this and this group is achieving that and this group is achieving that. I think historically, many African groups have held up. Pro-black groups have held up examples of historical warfare from particular groups or of the nature of certain groups. So yeah, it's always interesting to look at when you flip it on the other way around.
I think one thing I try to analyze is when you look at things like, is something a certain way because of the biology, or is something a certain way because of the psychology, right, or the social conditioning, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I think a race realist, from what I've seen, coming from the history of scientific racism, comes from the standpoint that your biology, the chemicals in your brain and the neurons and so forth, this is there is a certain a collection of people can achieve because of that, and they would reject, like, for the most part, the social conditioning, as in like being left in an area that's poor or going through trauma, and you know, those kind of other social conditioning. So this is the area that I see it at, and at this point, you could say it could be used for a certain type of agenda.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
With regards to the because I have heard this thing about the Chinese and the blah blah blah. Yeah. From my experience or observation, when they say that, it's more a rallying cry for Western organization, so to speak, in order to become superior in a particular field.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it feeds narratives like the Chinese are beating us in technology. We need to develop American technology, kind of thing. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yo.
Well, I mean, I can't say you're wrong in that standpoint. Like, yeah, you know, it definitely is a possibility. As in, like, you know, we've realized this, but then, I guess from their standpoint, from some, they might then say that's how it is. If that's the realist and that's how it is, then like they've accepted that reality, right? As in the Asians genetically are always going to be on average superior because their brain power, they're European.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, I'm not saying this is related, but I have noticed the consistency in, like, there's many like pro-strong Eurocentric white supremacist groups who actually do marry Asian females.
Yeah, from my understanding, that comes from the kind of big cow. Like, sorry, men going their own way and that kind of thing, and the incel people in, because they believe that the feminism of white women is destroying Western society.
Right.
So yeah, it's a weird.
I've heard this. I've heard this before. You know.
I don't know where I'm going right now from some big sabotage business. Audience.
Funny enough, there has been some
tell them to fall back and let my man
biracial
talk, fam. He's air now. Make him introduce
Asian
himself.
and European
This is crazy.
offspring who have whose parents might have been white supremacists and so forth, who have continued that notion, and then they themselves have
How the fuck I have to type in my own chat so they can
there was a guy, I forgot.
Leave this shit.
There was the Asian student killer who he was very jealous that do you remember, like, there was an Asian shooting of like a young Asian guy in the States who went around shooting a whole lot of students. He was upset.
Oh yeah.
What's his name? Because I believe it was Frances Cress Welskin. Before she passed, she was saying about being extremely jealous that he couldn't find women, but yet the women he liked were actually dating black men. Yeah, and he has should be first in line when it comes to getting women and so forth. She wondered why the news never covered this angle when they were describing what motivated him to actually go and start shooting the schools. 100.
Yeah, I got a few things to add, but I think Content is trying to talk to us. I think he's having technical difficulties because none of us could hear. I think all listeners could hear. I see Ralph is in the building.
Hey.
Maybe he wants to represent what he means by this race realism thing. But I'm gonna try and mute this. I'm gonna try and listen to the live show and see what content's been saying.
We might start this again now that Ralph is here.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Ralph, go ahead.
Oh, hi, man. Sorry, I'm late. I was doing something else, and then I just saw the emails. Yeah.
Yo, can you hear me? Can you man hear me?
Raven?
Yeah. I'm just trying to work out if content was talking.
You might have to start again.
Well, never start again, yeah.
So,
because he's content says he's muted this thing.
Yeah, probably there's some beef going on or some mishaps going on because Leon trying to talk to us, isn't it?
Really?
Yeah. What's everyone been talking about?
We'll be talking about what is race realism.
Okay. That's easy. I can define it as we see it. Like,
but hold off because we're just trying to see if the stream is actually working properly. So
okay.
The stream's live, man.
The stream's working fine. It's just content. He can't hear us. We can't hear him.
How are we going to continue the show if we can't hear the
I'm going to have to try and jump back in.
Keep reading the comments for him.
Crazy.
Silence is golden, man.
You type out what I'm saying, man.
What's content saying?
This is Ralph introduce the thing. He says, "Yo, mad team, let Ralph introduce the team." That's what he said. That's the last one I can say.
All right, well, let's go in then.
Let Ralph introduce the
team.
So
Ralph, what is Ralph? Welcome. Can you let the people at home your idea interpretation of race realism? Go.
Okay, no worries, man. So I'm a techie, a bit of a geek. So if we look at science, we look at it a particular way. We can say, hey, the universe is described using physics in the language of mathematics. And from physics, bottom up, imagine like a building, a tall building. And above physics, we can create chemistry. And from that, we create biological chemistry as opposed to other types of chemistry. And from that suddenly hits genetics, which we've only known since the 1950s. Now, from genetics, we can see that our genes describe our behaviors. It doesn't describe so there's a confusion there. It doesn't say, because I have a gene, this thing will happen. What it says, because I have a gene, I have a propensity for this thing to happen, depending what happens to me in an environment. And then genes are, every time we have children, genes are reproduced, and these behaviors come up. And from these behaviors, as an individual chimp, genetically, we have a history of 6 million years evolution from chimps. We behave in certain ways, and then we get together, as opposed to just one chimp, be in a family, in a sports theater, we have group behaviors. And those group behaviors in race realism says is because of political reasons for the last 50 years, even though we slowly accepted from science that, hey, we have different skin color, we have different different types of shapes of bones, we have put a muscle mass at different levels, we were not or behavioral issues being tied to issues like race, because that was defined as racism. Technology doesn't care about what you feel, and now we have the science and data, and it's right there to be seen. So what race realism says is we should look at genetic difference between white, black, brown, genetic differences between men and women, genetic differences between old and young, and only through that we'll be able to describe the problems accurately so that we can find answers accurately. That's what race realism is.
Right. So has race realism done that test already then? Have they gone out and got the info?
Yeah, so what's happening is, so if you imagine that building I was drawing, so if you then draw that building upwards, I can start sharing some screen stuff later, posting some links, because I've got lots of stuff that shows it to you. It's much easier sometimes. If you draw that thing, you say, hey, so I've got a certain set of genes. That genes might lead to a certain sort of behavior. From those behaviors, I get the data. So how does that look in real life? Let's take a black issue straight away, right? So here's some taboo black issues. Everyone wants to talk about black crime. But what is black crime? Black crime is at, say, the 8th floor of the building because it's a social phenomenon. Now, black crime then is a group statistics. If you go down, there's one person, that person over there, James, was the guy who committed the crime. But James is just a collection of behaviors coming from his genes. And from those genes, they can go downwards. And these genes are shared by different people. So if you look at the data, because you can't stop the data coming out, if you look at constant things like crime rates in the US, we can look at the US crime rates for black things and say, but hang on, the single factor that commits, do people know what the single biggest factor that's related to crime causally? If you factor out all the crime data, it's aggression. So aggression is the single biggest cause of a crime. So if I have low aggression, there's no crime. If I take every other social statistics data across 11 dimensions, house, poverty, income rate, the single data that says aggression. So then we say, okay, people aggressive are going to be criminals. It doesn't mean just black people are, anyone would be. So what causes, so for example, you think, well, what causes aggression, for example, right? You go down one more level. If you look at the way genes work, genes are indicated for aggression, you have like 741. If you look at that, you get to your chemical level of your body, where you see, oh, the following hormones at different levels, positively or negatively. So imagine that whole story building. At the top, we've got crime and acne. Underneath that, we've got one guy who did the crime and acne. Underneath that, we've got a history of the genetic biology. We've got a set of hormones all the way down to the particular genes. All race realism is saying is, hey, we can take that for white poverty. We can take that for Hispanic drink driving. We can take that for Indians only doing business with each other. We can look at these things, and then from that data, we can start saying, hey, what we thought was that problem, but that's not the cause of the problem, something else is. That is race realism for a real example.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, from what you said, I'm trying to just piece things together. So if that was the case, so if you're seeing like a consistent race doing a consistent thing, and we're going to try to get like the scientific answer from it, that could be biological.
Yeah.
How would you explain? So when we talk about aggression and violence,
yeah.
when we look at America and also in England as well, young European boys who shoot up schools, and this is quite consistent to the point where I haven't necessarily seen this kind of behavior from any other people group. So would you say that would be like a race thing as well? Like there's something about young European boys that makes them shoot up schools?
Well, absolutely. Again, if you just look at that. So the biggest study done to date, for example, has about 48 years of longitudinal data from the 1950s. But I mean, longitudinal data mean data over the time of those years. Because at that period, we say, hey, if I take all the data of 275 US cities, period, is it black people doing it? Is it poor people doing it? What is it? And you just build up a model. And we, for example, I'm looking at some of the models right now. We know the black areas have high crime rates, but it's got nothing to do with 11 factors. It's got nothing to do with population size, density, age, low parent homes. They cause other things, but they're not showing a statistics causing that. But what does cause it? Forget the black for a second. We say, hey, it's violent. So we say, so it's happening in Rio de Janeiro. It's happening in different places, not just a black. It's been caused by what? And if you look at the simple two big gene traits that result for violence, which is basically a controlled aggression, if cortisol is low, or epinephrine is high, the genes for those things say, hey, if I give that dose level to a woman, she'll be as aggressive as a man. So if you give it to a rhesus monkey in a test, a girl in the monkey comes out stronger than the alpha male. So we can say, Jack, why people with these genes have these hormones that then statistically show up to these behaviors. Once you can accept that, then you can say, hey, I'm not going to pretend it's something else, saying, hey, because he has a single parent father, or hey, because he's being oppressed by that. If that's not showing causal data, I think it's morally, scientifically wrong to pretend that's not the truth. Then you can fix it, right? So I remember, I'm older than a lot of the boys I talked to, so I remember in the 70s, we first identified in the early research that sickle cell anemia. Like, I get type 2, type 3 diabetes, Indians will. Before we knew that, we couldn't do anything about sickle cell anemia. Then we knew what it is, and then we could research it the same way. We can find out what things cause what things, and it's not just a black-white thing, it's in everybody in different ways, right? Now, the black community should own that so they can fix that, right? And that's why I get this left-wing, right thing that people get their knickers in a fucking twist. The left-wing thing, from my position on the right, is saying the left-wing are selling you a false description of the problem. Because they'll say, it's racism to point out something's black. It's racism to point out something's white. It's racism to point, that's a left-wing narrative. perspective was my only point in that night. Can it make sense? Or?
Well, I don't know if you necessarily answered my question about the, would it be something in the young white males' genes that makes them more prone to shoot up schools and stuff when they're,
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So you're talking like Elliot Rogers and the school shoot. There's almost no black Hispanic mass school shooting is mainly a U.S. phenomenon. It's only started 35 years ago. It's almost all young, single, really angry white boys. Mm-hmm. And because it's the US, they can get guns. If we could get guns in Europe, we'd have a fuck more. It wouldn't be black boys or Indian boys doing shootings. But yeah, that's genetic, right?
Yeah. So what is it? So what is that? So you were talking about violence and aggression in the black community, but what is it that's making the Europeans, if that's the case, behave in such a way?
So the same explanation. It's only by looking at that behavior and looking at the genes and trying to. So we should be taking all the school. Think of the school shooters, and let's take a more neutral example. Think of like the odd guys who kidnap little children and either sexually abuse them or kill them. Right? We've got enough stories. That's almost predominantly white, right? All those kind of deaths, right, are almost always white lower middle class males. If we were to take all the genes and have enough data points, we'd start saying, hey, the only genetic difference by this nutter who takes kids off and runs them onto a moor and does stuff is that gene. And of course, we're not going to find Chinese genes in that. It's not a Chinese problem. And same, the equally hard thing to expect is all those Pakistani grooming gangs with all this stuff for the last 28 years. It's not just Islam. It's not just that Pakistani. Of course, there's a genetic component. It would be mathematically insane to assume there wasn't, right?
Right. So do you not feel that social conditioning plays a big part in many aspects of life? So, for example, you have certain people rapping and looking a certain way, and that you could say that is that a biological thing, why they rap and sound and look the same way. But then you then go to China, India, Korea, Australia, and through observing that behavioral pattern, people are looking and sounding exactly the same way.
Oh, absolutely. So there's two things there. There's difference, and then there's the same, right? So, for example, everyone might converge to something shared across the world, right? Like, let's take a simple example. Most of the time you share a cigarette with a stranger you've never met before, right? You give them a cigarette, you give them a lighter, right? That's very common across cultures, language, races, everything, right? Hey, have you got a light, mate? Right? On the other hand, taking someone into your house and you've never met before and having a meal with them, you'll find much more of that in warmer southern cultures than you find in core white cultures. You don't take strangers into your house, right? So obviously there's broad things like that we all share or don't share. And there's very specific things, for example, right? So Indian culture, yeah? So those have to have a genetic component, because the whole point of a race realism is because you must jump down those towers in the building of the house, unless you're saying there's some ghost in the machine, there's some crazy depression people out to get you, everything else is from your genes in your environment. And we are now increasingly, day out, day in, week in, week out.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yo, Leon, are you there?
You might not be able to speak, you know.
Why?
He's probably trying to tell you it went wrong.
What's up? Rest.
The stream is buffering, so I'm wondering whether
start again.
So much is good getting caught. I'm wondering whether should I, like, my mic's not right. Because what I could do is I could stream it to. Is he there? Like me, I could stream and lock up in here. I don't know, fam. I don't know, because right now so much is being said and it's being lost.
No, my thing's still going. You know.
Oh, you're going.
Yeah, it's live still. My thing's still live.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Mine's live as well. I don't know if it's up to date, but it's live.
Yeah. Let me check if mine's up to date.
Let me type a 1, see if it comes up.
So what we want to do is, if it's lagging, while you're sorting that thing out, the people can't hear it. They just complain in the chat so they can't hear it.
That might be a few minutes ago. I'm not too sure.
Yo.
Yeah. I don't know. It could be buffering. I'm not sure.
No,
no,
your thing's not live, scattered.
No, not my channel. Not my channel. No, I'm saying content's still going on his. Like I can still see it running. The show's still running, isn't it?
Yeah, the show's still running, but they're